Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Our guest this evening is Daniel Cooper. Daniel has created a very interesting framework, a kind of a criteria for determining the validity of extraterrestrial contact. He came up with it before he was ever aware of the Meier material. And what's very interesting about this framework of his is it fits the Meier case absolutely perfectly. I'm not sure how much we're going to talk about his framework tonight, though. I think I'm going to talk a little bit, or probably more, a whole lot more about the universal prophet, the Nokodamian lineage that we started on last night. Let me go ahead and bring Daniel on the air here and see how he's doing this evening. Daniel, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Quite good. How are things in Canada?
Oh, not too bad. Getting a little chillier now, finally. So I guess still not holding up to usual winter standards, but at least we have minus numbers now instead of melting snow. So so that's good. Yeah. How are things with you?
Oh, they're superb. You are way up north, right?
Yes, up just near Alaska, actually. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Have you?
It's about an hour drive from here. So.
Have you ever been to Alaska?
Oh, many times. Yes.
Oh, really?
We kind of do it as a day trip here. So it's just something we just kind of do once in a while. So. I guess they have all of the access to the waterfront there with the ocean and stuff. So unless you want to go to Vancouver, which is 2,000 kilometers away or 2,500 kilometers away, I don't know, long ways. So
incredible how big that is. I have a guest. I have a guest, Henry Kroll, who is from Alaska up there, and I've interviewed him for years, and
cool.
He really likes it up there as well.
Yeah, it has advantages. Sorry?
It has its advantages and disadvantages, like everything else. Now, how cold will it get up where you are this winter?
My personal record when I was growing up, this was in, I think, grade 6, when I was 11 or 12, it must have been 12, was minus 58 Celsius. So that's really cold. So I guess minus 40 Fahrenheit and minus 40 Celsius is where they meet up. And then after that, it changes. So, yeah. So, anyway.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. It's chilly.
Well, let me dive into this universal prophet material, the Nokodamian lineage. This, to me, I don't know, I get real excited about this information. I don't know if you've seen the PDF that shows this lineage. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat room again for anyone there that wants to see it. It's pretty amazing stuff. Now, I can see why skeptics, this would really trigger a skeptic, because first of all, Billy's saying he's the universal prophet, which sounds, from one way of looking at it, incredibly arrogant or prideful, but it doesn't strike me that way at all. But let me continue here. Every universe brings forth a universal prophet who will repeatedly materialize again and again as a human being. And the purpose of the universal prophet is to help speed up our evolution. And the first individual named in this lineage, and I don't think this is the complete lineage, but the first one is Nokodamian, who was born about 9.6 billion years ago, sometimes called the unblemished or the precious one. 9.6 billion years ago is a long time ago. That's before there was an Earth, probably even before our star completely formed. I'm guessing that Nocodamian was probably from the Lyra Vega system, and even probably earlier from the Lyran galaxy. And what we have here is a spirit form that's very, very ancient. And that is very, very important. Now, just a kind of quick refresher to anyone that might be listening to this archive a little later and not that familiar with the Meier case. We all have what's called a spirit form, or a Geist form in the German, and it resides in the middle of our brains in an area called the superior colliculus, and that's where the eye gazes. And the spiritual consciousness, when it comes in 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg, and it also brings with it a new material consciousness. So a human being consists of a material consciousness, which is new with each reincarnation, and a spiritual consciousness, which benefits from each reincarnation. The spirit form, it needs the material consciousness and the material life in order to evolve. So what we have here in my notes here, and we have the whole, or a good portion of the lineage of Edward Albert Meier, the same spirit form. The next incarnation was about 8 billion years ago of a man named Henoch, and the Henoch is spelled with a K. He was called the Wise Man of Time, the Initiate. Now, Henoch and Nocodamian were incarnated prior to the Earth, on other galaxies, on other worlds, and probably even different space-time configurations. Now, the next incarnation is of an individual called Semyasa. And Semyasa was here during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. He was a scientist who worked under Eris the Barbarian, and he fathered Adam about 13,035 years ago. And if you're interested in learning more about this, you can find it in Contact Report 9. Semyasa was one of the 200 leaders and sub-leaders that worked under Eris the Barbarian, and he mated with what was called an Eva. And an Eva is a female human being, a kind of leftover in this case, because the people from Lyra Vega were here before the Atlantis and Lemurian civilization started. And those people, some of those people, they go back 389,000 years ago. Some of those people committed certain violations, like some of them raped and abused the Earth people. Some of them had sex with the Earth people who were at a completely lower level of involvement. And as a punishment, these Lyrians took all the technology away from these people and they left them stranded on Earth. So these people that had very much older spirit forms, who had been in societies that were very advanced, who had lived with technology, now were forced to struggle to survive. And I've always thought, Daniel, that would be an incredible punishment that, went multiple lifetimes long. Have you ever thought about that?
Of course. I never thought of it as in terms of all the history when I was thinking about it growing up, but certainly didn't dawn on me that I would ever want to be born on this planet. So that's for sure. I just couldn't come to terms with that, I guess, and in many ways, and I suppose many smart kids, who have considerable abilities in mathematics or whatever it might be, look at our world and think, oh my gosh, I don't think I would want to be here if it was up to me. So, so we just have to make the most of what we have and go along with it, right?
It's interesting to me that you felt this way from a very, very young age, didn't you?
Yeah, I think most of us do, in many ways. I just, well, I don't know. I assumed that many people did at the time, so, but maybe it was just in my head. But I don't know. It seems a lot of people are certainly struggling. That's for sure. Trying to make sense of our materialism and our greed and all the stuff that's just totally destroying everything, right? So
exactly. Now, the Meier material also talks about the 7 prophets, and usually they list them as Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad. And one of the things that's brought out in this lineage here is that the Enoch was actually pronounced Henoch, and it was actually 3 people. Henoch the first, who was born 13,500 years ago. Henoch the second, born about 9,300 years ago. And Henoch the third was born about, I think it's 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And then you have the names of the people that we have heard in the Old Testament, which would be Elijah, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. And these names would have been pronounced differently at the time. For example, Isaiah was known as the one with creational healing, or the one with Ishwish healing. Elijah was known as a lover of creation. He was also sometimes called JHWH, or Ishwish is my teacher. His disciple was also called Eljas or Elias, and is mentioned in the Talmud of Emmanuel. Now, Jeremiah, who was born about 662 BC, was known as the one raised by the gods. And then we have additional, again, I'm mentioning the material lifetimes of the spirit form of Edward Albert Meier. The next one mentioned in the lineage is Socrates, who was born in Athens about 469 BC, I believe. Aristotle, who was born 384 BC. And then the next incarnation was Emmanuel, the one with divine knowledge, the one with Ishwish knowledge. Unfortunately, he's called Jesus today. And the Meier material says that the New Testament has been highly distorted. Daniel, can you comment on Emmanuel, the New Testament, or any of these other incarnations that you found interesting?
Well, I guess it was something that I kind of thought about when I was young, that the Bible in itself certainly had a lot of contradictions, and I know that it upsets a lot of people. But I don't know. We're living in a different time. It's we know about science and things now, so I guess they didn't have that stuff when they were writing these books, and certainly when they were being rewritten by other human beings at later times after his death, and so certainly people who would be interested in controlling others and trying to get money or whatever it might be from, a big crowd of people, like we do with governments and so on and so forth, and churches, and would certainly have an interest in spreading information that isn't exactly useful in the terms of using your own thoughts and your own observations of what you see and all this kind of stuff, instead putting it outside of yourself and always saying that, well, it's something else outside of me that dictates my life, and all this kind of stuff. So I certainly, I certainly didn't have any trouble with that explanation, because with Emmanuel versus AKA Jesus, whatever, that came later on, and so that wasn't a surprise to me at all, and actually I find it quite interesting, just with the name Emmanuel on its own. Just the way how sounds actually impact our subconscious and so forth. I'm a musician and so on too, and So this is something I've thought lots about too, but you can't use the name Emmanuel as a swear word. It just doesn't work. You know what I mean?
That's it.
Whereas with
That's very interesting.
Whereas with Jesus Christ, you can use it really well. It works great, and so when they talk about it in the Meier material as being Jesus Christ being a name that actually has a very negative effect on the subconscious, I can totally see how that would make sense, and it's so I guess it was resulting from some ancient cult, right, of human sacrifice.
It sounds kind of harsh. It strikes me as sounding harsh. Does it strike you that way too?
For sure. Yeah. No kidding. It seems very easy to use when you're very angry, whereas Emmanuel, you just Anyway, so that was one little thing based on Meier stuff. I was thinking about other things before I ever got into Meier stuff, but before that, and but yeah. So for me, that was certainly no surprise at all. And that it would be falsified and and so on and so forth throughout time for control and for power and all this kind of accumulation of wealth by people in power and so forth. So it's really easy to it's really easy to be in power over people who are ignorant. So I guess that's why they start the Bible with the tree of knowledge is bad and all this kind of stuff and on and on. So just it just doesn't make any sense if you're really interested in thinking about things, but anyway, yeah. Again, if they really wanted to give us super good knowledge, tell us to boil water, to kill germs, that would be great. So something that everyone could have done at the time, and would have saved many lives for sure, and improved the quality of life of many, many people. I guess I was watching a TV show, QI, with Stephen Fry and so on. They talk about all these kinds of things, and I guess not these things, but I mean just talk about interesting things. That's why QI is quite interesting, is what they mean. And they were talking about how the British, I guess, how did it go exactly? I guess they were talking about how just the making of tea really. The proliferation of tea and so on in the British public actually really helped to alleviate many of the sicknesses and so on in their history, because of course you have to boil water, right? So anyway, so it's just these really simple brain dead things that they could have maybe added if it was really from God or all this kind of stuff, quote unquote. Anyway, so if it really was so knowledgeable about the universe, that would have been a good start, I think. That's just my opinion, but anyway, yeah. So as for some of the later personalities like Galileo and Mozart and so on, I actually did ask Billy about that this summer when I was there, especially about Mozart, because I wasn't too sure about that one. And and he said, no, that's true, that's right. And I thought, okay, that's interesting, because I actually did find pictures and so forth, how the faces and so on can sort of be very similar from lifetime to lifetime. And so I was looking for pictures of Galileo. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking for pictures of Galileo and Mozart, and of course they were just paintings, but and Rasputin, and of course Billy, and so on, and so. It's pretty amazing, the stunning, similarities. And I even found a paper about Mozart, and his eyes apparently were very, very, very striking, and so on. So I guess it was some paper that was written somewhere, or I don't remember if it was a university thing or not, but anyway, yeah, it's all pretty interesting. And so actually I found even under... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish your thought.
Oh, no, I was just with another picture of Rasputin I was looking at just on Google, and underneath it there was somebody had written in pencil, I guess, on the picture that his eyes were extremely hypnotizing or very, very, very strong, like he would look right through you, that kind of thing. And I guess somebody had scanned the picture and that was on it, and so on, and I looked at it, and yeah, it looks exactly like Billy's stare, that I don't know, that's that signature stare that I've never seen with anybody else, and it's very interesting how that works out. So yeah, so I'm not altogether surprised, that's for certain, about all these personalities. It's, Mozart was an unbelievable genius, and to be able to do what he did in such a short lifetime too, and starting so young and so on too. Like, I'm a musician, so I can really, 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 really appreciate just the enormity of what he did, and it's just unbelievable. So it's pretty amazing, and so to be able to have that amount of innate wisdom and so forth just on one given subject like that, I mean, that's just, it's so young, before ever going through university or any of that stuff. I mean, I'm not sure if they had those back then, but still amazing. I mean, absolutely incredible. When he was 5 years old, he was already composing, big, whatever the word is, pieces of music. So yeah, I mean, it really is not surprising, and I think music is actually so important for our development as well, and to live a lifetime just dedicated completely to music, at that time, really opened the door, I think, for many, many other branches in music to grow and to expand and flourish, so I think he really broke a lot of ground there that really opened up a lot of possibilities for us in that respect too. So that's it. Yeah, it's incredible. It's pretty neat. And of course, before I ever started the calculations, when I was a little kid, I was really interested in Galileo. So for me, I was really interested in finding someone like Galileo in this lifetime, and that's not something that you can just do by watching the news, because just like back in the day when Galileo was alive, you wouldn't just be able to pick up, whatever they had in terms of news sharing at that time. You wouldn't be able to find, neutral information in that respect. So a lot of it would probably be tainted by the church or, whatever it might be. So it's really up to each individual to think for himself. And I think that's the biggest lesson and turning point, I think, in our history. And I think that really, really, really laid down the foundation to make these contacts today possible. So since everyone now can read and write, everyone has, basic, at least in non-developing nations, a basic understanding of science and reading and writing and mathematics and so on at a high school stage. And so it just made it possible to break away from that monopoly that the Catholic Church was creating in terms of what information would get disseminated, right? So that's huge.
One of the things I've learned within the past year or two, which I've had a huge impact on me, I was very slow to pick up on the Emmanuel material. It's probably because of my religious upbringing. So I kind of went out and tried to find some proof outside of the Meier material that the person that we call Christ was actually named Emmanuel. And I didn't actually find that. But what I found out was almost more interesting, because I found that the only language in the ancient world that had the letter J was the Lyrian language. The Hebrew, the Greek, the Aramaic didn't have the letter J. The English, the German, none of our languages had the letter J in it, which is astonishing. So all the people in the New and the Old Testament today, all those individuals who have the letter J in their name, that was inserted later. And I have a link that people can see, and maybe I'll throw that in the chat room later. It's a 1611, a true from 1611 version of the King James. You can buy those that say the authorized 1611 version, but if you get a truly ancient Bible, from 1611, it will say the New Testament of our Lord and Savior, i.e. SVS Christ. And that's what he was called in the Greek and the Latin. they used the letter I-E-S, V-S, or I-E-S-U-S, and it was pronounced Jesus with a Y. Now, there was a guy named Gian Giorgio Turisno in about 1550, who invented the letter J, and he may have been one of the ones that started to do the substitutions. But before then, the book of Job was the book of IOB. James and John's names are unpronounceable. I think I might have them written down here somewhere. Maybe I'll try to say them again if I come across it in my notes. But in the Old English, there was no letter J. There was an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, no U, V, no W, X, Y, Z, and then a couple other letters that we don't use anymore. There was no W, there was no J, there was no U in the Old English. And anyone can verify this for yourself. How that ever, we all should know that. You know what I'm saying? That should be common knowledge. It should be common knowledge, right? And
yeah, that's interesting.
We think of the Bible as being, at least I always did, as being the Word of God. But if it was so written in stone, why would they go back and change, for example, the names of James and John? James's real name is spelled Y-A-A-Q-O-V. Yaakov, I would just guess. John's real name was spelled Y-A-H-U-C-H-A-N-O-N. I guess it was too hard for them to say, too. So they had to create a new name. But, yeah, I've done shows on that. So, I don't know, you hadn't heard that before, Michael or Daniel?
No, I haven't. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'm just as ignorant as many people on many subjects, and I like it that way. I like to keep learning. So yeah, that's interesting.
Have you ever studied the Council of Nicaea at all?
Never heard of it. No.
Well, we'll have to do a show on that sometime. That is a very, very interesting thing as well, and that's related to the name of the person that we call Jesus Christ today as well, where the name came from. You know, I found it really interesting what you were saying about the name Emmanuel. It sounds comforting, doesn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, I forget what it I forget what it means in the Book of Names, but it's. Yeah, I guess it certainly has a nice flow to it compared to Jesus Christ. So it's certainly, yeah. And I guess actually, you know what? I was thinking too when you were mentioning all the stuff about the J's and the letter J and so on. Have you ever watched that documentary? I don't know if it was on BBC or not, but it was about actually how. Jesus, or AKA whatever Jesus, lived and actually went to India after he was nailed up on the cross, and so on. And I wonder, have you seen that?
I have seen that, and I had a fellow on the show that's written a couple books about that.
Oh, right on. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it is pretty interesting. I certainly did enjoy that, and I mean, I wouldn't say it's all completely factual in every sense, but I mean it certainly gets people thinking because certainly there was somebody going around all these different I guess I don't know if it was Buddhist temples and so on, but at the time, but because I don't know the time period of Buddha exactly, but I know there were many temples around the Middle East and so on, and in the Far East, I think even as well, in Tibet and so on, wasn't it? That this guy had gone through and was a teacher, and I guess they called him Issa or something, so it was kind of a nickname for him. So, yeah, I always found that pretty interesting.
After the cross, according to Meier information, doesn't the Talmud say he did go into India after the cross?
Yes, yeah. I guess he had kids and a family and everything there, a wife, and lived to the ripe old age of 115 or something. So I don't know, but yeah. No, it's interesting. So it certainly bears out what some of these other findings, these sort of non-Christian findings are finding out about, about this character that was living at that time and teaching. And I found it interesting to explore other things. Sorry, go ahead.
One of the next incarnation of the Meier spirit form is said to be Muhammad, who's called the Praised One. That was 571 A.D. I have not studied Muhammad much in the Meier material, but I had some links that I've lost. There are some contact reports on Muhammad. Have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, but my memory is, I have to read things more than once or twice to really get a solid grasp of, all the information. But it's something I do want to study a bit more about, and it does interest me actually a fair amount, considering what's going on in our world today. With all of this demonizing of Islam and all this kind of stuff, which probably, whatever. Maybe I won't go into that, but it's certainly something that I would say it's worth considering in many respects, but I don't want to demonize anybody, and I think obviously there are, most of them are the Muslims are wonderful, peace-loving people, and so on and so forth too, and so a lot of the demonizing, I think a lot of it comes from the West in many respects too, and so forth, and is kind of put on steroids, I guess, through the media and so forth. And not to say that all of it is positive, but you can certainly see my ignorance on the subject is more than what it should be for this particular conversation, especially on the radio. So something I would certainly want to study more about.
Are you currently studying German?
Yes. Yeah, I was working on that today a little bit. Yeah. And are you as well?
No, I was. I've really slacked off. When you were last time over in Switzerland, you had to speak to Billy in German, correct?
Yes. I could see that he wasn't really interested in talking in English, and certainly Jacobus wasn't interested in talking in English either. He didn't speak in English anyway, and so I when I had conversations with them, I would just try my hardest actually to speak in German. And actually, when I was on the phone one time before I came to the center, I called, and actually Billy answered the phone, and I was trying to speak in German, and I just started laughing, and he started laughing, and we just had a good moment there. So it was kind of funny, and because I was just making such a hash of it, but it certainly improved over the last year, and they were quite pleased with how much it had improved as well. So that was nice, I guess. But Billy did revert a little bit into English as well, seeing how much I was, trying hard to really learn and to work on German and so forth. But it's not something that he would normally go into, and certainly with subjects on the spirit teaching and all that kind of stuff, he would certainly never, I don't think, would go into English. So we were just mostly talking about cowboy music and stuff like that, and ranching music? And yeah. Well, I brought this CD along that I grew up listening to, and my dad really enjoyed too. It was with Roy Rogers and all these guys. I don't know if you know the Sons of the Pioneers, but it's very harmonious and beautiful harmonies and beautiful melodies and nice lyrics and so on. It's very enjoyable music. So so I brought that CD along. I thought he might enjoy that, and so we talked a little bit about this and that. And so yeah, it's just because of course where I grew up, it's sort of what people are into. So Did
Billy listen to that CD, or did Jacobus?
I brought it over to Billy, something that I thought maybe he would enjoy, and so yeah. But actually, I remember when we were talking on one of our last radio interviews, you were asking me if Jacobus had spoken anything about his experiences with UFOs and things, and I just kind of jumped into some other subjects, But I did ask him a little bit about that, and certainly he's seen a lot of things, and that was this last time I went. We were driving back from somewhere. I don't remember what the names of the towns are around there, but I got to ask him a few questions about this and that, and certainly he's seen many, many interesting things. So, yeah. So he's been there since before they came public, I think, since I think he knew Billy or something since the early 1970s. So,
oh yeah. Was it Jacobus that walked in on Billy and Semyasi?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And you're familiar with that? No, I'm sure you didn't.
Yes, I am.
You're familiar with that whole story, though, with what happened, right?
Yes. At least to my limited knowledge, yes. Yeah. So it's I guess he must have felt bad, but oh well, things happen. So it's not something that I don't think he could be blamed for necessarily. And he's a really, really nice guy, and really means well and everything. So I my hat's off to him. I think he's a great guy. So we have that in my he's very patient with my German too, so that's very nice.
It would be interesting to talk to him about that. I mean, although I'm sure it's probably something he doesn't like to talk about. And for people that are listening that aren't familiar with what we're discussing, I guess it was Jacobus that walked in on Billy and Semyasi. The Plejaren are very sensitive to our vibrations, our thought vibrations, and it has a tremendously negative impact on them. It causes them to lose control of their bodies, and Semyasi ended up falling down and hitting her head on a table. And one way or another, she got transported back to her ship shortly thereafterwards, but she was severely injured over that. And that was the injury that really cut short Billy's contacts with Semyasi. She ended up having to go, I guess, into the Tao universe to actually get serious treatment. And she won't even be back normal for another 70 years or something to that effect, starting at that time, which I guess was in 84. I can't remember the exact date. I have to look it up. But that's kind of scary. I mean, if you think about, it's so obvious why they don't want open contact with us, right?
Yeah, well, that and all the obvious reasons of our insanity, in terms of our power structures, who would just want their ship and stuff instead of actually wanting to learn something from them, So, of course, our militaries and so on are always so hell-bent on wanting to boost their advantages and so forth, and there's very little interest in actual consciousness evolution. So I think, yes, the reasons are manifold, and I think it was Robin Foley that from Australia that was at the center too, and she woke up from her sleep needing to throw up right away or whatever, and I guess I don't know if it was, I don't know who it was that walked by, but it was one of Billy's contactors as well, and all of a sudden she smelled this really sweet smell. I guess it was like some sort of a hope you feel better kind of thing, and all of a sudden, it just kind of came out of the air, and she had a really difficult time describing it. I don't remember how she described it, but similar kind of experience, I guess. So, yeah,
wow.
She told me all about that, and I guess she wrote about it, and
what was her name?
Robina Foley, I guess. I'm not sure if she goes under the name of Robina or Robin now, but
is she the lady that translated the stuff on the love and the spiritual teachings? I love that. I think that's great stuff. Robin Foley?
She does a lot of that, and for sure. It's she's been doing that for a long time, and I guess she helped with some of the books that they published as well in Australia and so forth, and in English, and so. But anyway, it's just a little corroboration of that experience, I guess, from her own experience.
She's from Australia, and she was also visiting the center in Switzerland, right?
Yeah. I guess it was a few years ago, so must have been a while ago. It was before I went, I think. So at least a year.
How many trips have you made at this point?
I think about 5 now. One time I went to Switzerland. I actually didn't go to the center, but that was because I went twice in one summer. So I went back because I was in Europe for a while. So
wow.
So yeah, I went first time just to check it out, just for 3 days, and just to kind of say hi and work a little bit, and then the next time I went for another 3 days or 4 days, and then I went for a week and a half the next time, and so on and so forth. I don't know. I can't remember exactly all the details, but yeah, it just kind of all goes together over the years. So first time in 2016.
And you saw a ship when you were in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, just this last time. Well, at least the reflection of the ship. I guess it wasn't the ship itself. So yeah. So, yeah. You get to see interesting things when you're around there. Of course, it's if you keep your eye on the sky, that kind of stuff. And yeah, so this time I had the opportunity to take pictures, so that was very fun indeed. Billy was quite happy with that too. So, and everyone else had a good time that evening. And I didn't quite realize, I didn't think it would have any impact. Of course, we're in the digital age now, so it's not really the same as when Billy took his pictures with his film photography. But anyway, it was fun, and it certainly corroborated one of his old contacts from 1983 with. I guess there was 2 contacts. There was one where he described it as being all the colors of the rainbow, and then there was another one where he described it as being like an intense light pink nebula kind of thing. And and so that's what I got to take a picture, was that intense, intensely pink, constantly changing nebula shape thing. I don't know. And every second it was a different shape to the naked eye. And then I started taking pictures, and you can see every picture is completely different from the other one. And I guess the ship is many kilometers away, and it sort of projects an image of itself, so that they're sort of protecting their location and so on, and what they look like. And then if the military wants to go and chase their ships, then they can go and feel free to do that. It doesn't really bother them. They can keep doing their work. So yeah, it was just over the center, and I was just walking outside, and I looked up between the 2 trees, and there it was. So yeah, it was almost stationary, and then it would move very, very slowly, and then it would stop, and then it just kept changing shape constantly, and so on too. So yeah. So I should send you those pictures. I guess the Canada newsletter, the FIGU newsletter, they just published something about that with my pictures in it too. So
no
so if
kidding.
people want to see them, yeah. So if people want to see them, I guess they can have a look at that. So yeah, that's on the FIGU Canada website, so their official website. So,
do you have any desire to have your own website?
Not really. I don't have any reason to. I mean, FIGU already has its platform and stuff, and if I really need to publish anything, useful in that regard, then like the calculations, for example, then I'll use what they already have, and they're quite happy to publish that on their own. So I don't see any reason for me to get into that necessarily. It's not really my strength. Mm-hmm. I'm not into computers very much, so.
Oh, really?
It's taken me like 2 years. Yeah, no, it's taken me like 2 or 3 years just to learn how to use my basic recording program. So I'm not really I'm not a genius when it comes to that stuff at all. So yeah, so just building a website is
too much work.
Go ahead. Yeah, for sure. And there's just no reason for it. So go ahead.
Are you recording? You're recording right now the saxophone stuff?
Yeah, just some stuff that I've been working on and trying at home and so on and so forth. So nothing big and fancy, but yeah, no, it's just kind of fun, sort of. spiritual music, I guess you could call it. I don't know. It ends up sounding like kind of movie music in some respects, at least the stuff that I'm composing and so on. So, yeah, so that's fun. I just always thought that the world needed a bit more melodic music, so I thought, well, if I can contribute to that in any way in this lifetime, then that would be great. Thumbs up to that, yeah. So, so, yeah, and yeah.
I think that there is a very strange trend towards disharmony in music, and it seems like it's getting worse. And I don't think it's by chance. I think it's by design. Of course, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but some of the
that's an interesting word. Sorry, I'll stop you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that word conspiracy theorist. I think there was a Freedom of Information Act request or something where they found out where that word came from. It was actually the CIA that created that word to discredit people that were sort of not talking according to the official narratives. At the time, I guess it was in 1967 or something, they came up with that word. So, just so you know. So,
people that think independently are conspiracy theorists nowadays.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
And what Billy says about thinking independently, that thinking independently is like one of the very most important things to evolving your consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's exactly how the calculations, came about for me, and I was on my own. So there was nobody there to tell me what to think. The people that were trying to tell me what to think were completely, in my opinion, totally wrong on everything or almost everything. So I just had to make my own framework in that sense. So yeah, it is up to everyone. And everyone has to think for themselves. There is no such thing as thinking for somebody else. It's kind of like doing push-ups or eating. You can't do that for somebody else either. So.
Right. So your framework predicted that the real ET contact would occur in Switzerland, that it would occur in the middle 1970s. What else am I leaving out here?
Well, I guess the end result is not as interesting as how I got to those conclusions. It's kind of like looking at the back of the math book. You're looking at all these answers, and well, that's great, but how do you get there, right? And so that's kind of what I talk about in the beginning of my calculations. It's the calculation came out, those numbers and that place in Switzerland in 1975 came out at the end of. That was the end result of it all, right? So it doesn't say anything to anybody if they don't understand how that process came about. Excuse me. And so it's kind of I don't know if you really want to go into that this show, but we can. I always it's just my strong point, unfortunately, and it's just kind of where I come from, because that's how I sort of see this case and. How I saw it, growing up and so forth too. Because even when I was a little kid, 7 years old, I kind of had an inclination that this thing was going on, and so I just kind of started on that path. And I was thinking about some stuff today, and I don't know. I was just kind of going through. Have you ever seen this is a totally different subject. I'm sorry. But have you ever seen the TV show Fawlty Towers?
No.
With John Cleese and so on. It's from 1975, actually. Come to think of it. I just realized that now. But I was watching that show, and it's actually a really, really well-known TV show it's like sort of one of those milestones in comedy, that kind of thing, like Monty Python or whatever, all this kind of stuff. And I was just thinking about that today because I've been watching this show again recently, and it's such a negative show. Everything about it is about this guy who can't ever seem to get anything he wants in life, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember watching this show when I was particularly in a depressed state in my life, and back early 20s, late teens mostly. I found very interesting because I was looking for comedy as a way to sort of express myself against all the, crap and pressures or whatever, whatever was going through my head at the time, in my life, going on in my life, with, just really ridiculous ideas that I was finding and so on and so forth. And comedy was kind of a way to sort of, push back against that. But I just found it so dissatisfying in the end because these people, you look at these people and not in real life, but I mean in these TV shows and the stories of it, and it's just so depressing. Even though it's really funny, it's actually really depressing because it's just telling you that, nothing ever goes the way you want it in life, and it's all out of your hands anyways, and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking about that today, and I was like, man, I should not have been watching that show at the time because that, I was depressed. I was, just trying to figure out, why should I stick around for all this? What's going to be a crazy lifetime, with this world going the way it is, and all this kind of stuff at the time. So, and this was many, 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 many years ago. So I'm nowhere near that thought process anymore. But I just thought, imagine all the people that are actually going through these depressions or whatever and completely unable to cope with it because either they started taking drugs or they started, just finding some way of not being able to process what is going on. And that a lot of people end up just looking for sort of the lighter side of life and the comedies and stuff like that. But I just find so much comedy is so completely destructive.
Empty?
In many. Yeah, very empty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually it's quite destructive in the sense that it always seems to be about, or in many cases it seems to be about, people who can't get their lives together, and they just never do and never will, and that's the end of it, And I don't know. I always wondered about that because I was actually at the time using this comedy as sort of a way to defend myself against all this kind of stuff, and I could see why it wasn't working. Because you learn things from what you watch. It's just normal. It's obvious. So
I think it can be very destructive subconsciously, and unconsciously you absorb all that negativity, and then it just resurfaces later.
Yeah, because you don't learn anything new. You don't learn anything how to process your what you're dealing with or anything. It's a good laugh maybe, but you still end up with the thought, well, life is crap. So that's, not a really good, positive, useful direction. And I just find so much of the world is like that.
Now, you've read The Might of Thoughts, right?
Yes. Yes, I have.
That's one of the most important books. And just this one little concept of always self-examining yourself to see if you're neutral.
Yes.
Look at yourself. Am I neutral, positive? Am I neutral? And you'll find that 90% of the time when you're getting angry or depressed or even too ecstatic, you can say, wow, I'm not neutral right now. So let's get back to the middle ground here. And that little bit of advice is so huge. It's very simple, and the skill is being able to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's, I was actually thinking about, kind of what some of the things we could talk about for this show. And I was talking actually to a friend of mine, another friend in Australia, and he's always talking about, the material in terms of, what's going on in the world and all this kind of stuff. And he gets really depressed because, he knows a lot of stuff that's going on in the world, but he's not really processing it in that respect either. And so, because he's not finding that neutral ground, that neutral positive ground to really start from. And actually, as far as the meditation stuff goes, I really enjoyed actually one of the passages in The Way to Live. And so I actually wrote it down for myself and printed it out, and I have it on my wall here. and it's about meditation. And it's just, can I read it to you? Because
sure.
I just love it. It's from line 372. I don't know if there's chapters and stuff. I just wrote that down. Sorry. I didn't write the page number. I should have. But as you can see, I was just writing it for myself. So, but anyway, so I'll start. Yeah, the meditation is an extremely important factor in one's development for the purpose of evolution. Meditation is also very important for the creating of the psychical and consciousness-based balance, as well as for the well-being of the body. But a further foundation is also the integration of the meditation into the thinking and actions and into the entirety of everyday life. This is the purpose and sense of meditation. The meditation has become particularly significant, especially in the present time, and its integration in everyday life has become an indispensable necessity. That which expresses DeWalt and challenges of all kinds, as well as manyfold forms of enjoyments and diversions, more and more show how urgently necessary it has become to integrate the meditation into the life of the human being. Today, namely, everything is rushed and stressful, and there is hardly any real recuperation and equalizedness anymore. For a long time already, it has no longer been as it was in the past, when everything was still and handled calmly and with careful consideration. For this reason, the meditation is more urgently necessary today than ever before. But how can the human being now integrate the meditation into his or her everyday life? How can she permeatingly bring a quiet joy into the everyday life and allow generous equanimity of the meditation to be effective? Effectively, there is no special formula for that, and also no substitute for regular practice. And this practice is structured purely individually, so it is always subject to the choice of the individual meditator. But one thing is clearly certain: only she who begins the genuine practice of meditations and carries it out unswervingly finds the real calm of the true nature of consciousness and of the inner self. And only she who practices the meditation unswervingly and again will uninterruptedly feel restful effect and attain. Feel its restful and effect and attain the ability to incorporate into his or her everyday life and maintain all experiences which are collected through the meditation. Therefore, if the human being wants to achieve a real meditative success, then she must not carry out the practice of the meditation only as an occasional medicine or therapy, rather only as a duty which is necessary for life. So that's the end of the quote. But I find this to be more and more true for myself, and it's just, it's so profound. I just absolutely love that. So,
that's a beautiful passage. Was that line 372 you said?
Yes, in The Way to Live. Yeah. So
I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah, it's wonderful because I keep finding myself kind of drifting away from meditation, once in a while, and then I kind of get back into it for a while, and then the more I realize I do it, the more I realize, man, I should have been doing this all along, and then I kind of stop again because I'm busy with stuff and whatever, and then I get back into it, and I'm like, man, why did I stop? This is crazy because it really helps me actually deal with things, So
it's restful too sometimes. It's restful.
Exactly. We use these stresses in life as an excuse not to do it, but actually it kind of alleviates those stresses to begin with, so they're not as stressful. So it's just kind of like this self-fulfilling loop in either direction, whichever direction you really want to go. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So
well, maybe next time we can talk about meditation more. How about that?
Yeah, that would be great because I think that's something that would be really worth exploring. For a lot of people, a lot of people who listen to radio shows and stuff like that, and on the Billy Meier material are usually exposed to the doom and gloom and stuff like that, which is important. It's important to be neutral, but to be neutral positive also requires to look at the positives and the points that we have and the strength that we have in our own selves to deal with life and so on and so forth. In a way that makes just calmness and peace and so forth a possibility even in our crazy lives. And I think that's just probably one of the most important things that we can learn as a humanity at this point. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons, why this mission is taking place, because it's teaching us the facets of our mind, in terms of what is learning, what is learning, how do we tap into, the many facets of our mind to improve our learning, to improve our understanding, to improve our neutral approach to everything that we do, whether it be in music or driving or being a spaceman or kicking a soccer ball or whatever it might be, relationships or business, anything. And, just finding that neutral ground. And I think, once we realize that we can get peace within ourselves, then I think it just makes relationships so much easier too. And, everything that we do is based in relationships. We have to deal with people wherever we are most of the time, and with projects and, working life and all this kind of stuff that we do. So I think if there's anything to learn from these contacts, I think that meditation is the one thing that I was really most interested in finding, and I wanted to find stuff that was not going to, screw me up too badly. So that's why the framework, it really came in handy in that sense. So sort of a filter, just getting rid of all of the religious interests and all that stuff, the Christianities and the whatever it might be. I found even Buddhism has a lot of contradictions and stuff too that are worth examining, for living a more practical life and so on. So those were some things that I was running into as well with other people, and they didn't find me very particularly interesting to be around because I wasn't interested in just sitting there vegetating, like a vegetable. I was contemplating life. I really wanted to also deal with life, and but to deal with it in a way that's neutral, positive. And so not to escape life, not to leave life, and leave one's responsibilities, but to actually take responsibility for it and to continue and deal with it and to continue to deal with it better and improve our ways of dealing with things. So I think that's huge. I think that's really huge. So yeah, it's something that interests me more and more.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on meditation and your thoughts that come from The Way to Live. I love that book. And we'll talk again soon, sir. Have a great evening.
It always goes by so quickly.